August 1, 1943, dawned with an oppressive heat in Benghazi, Libya, where hundreds of American airmen were gathered in a stifling briefing tent. Their gazes were fixed on a series of aerial reconnaissance photographs, images that would indelibly alter the course of their lives. The designated objective was Ploesti, Romania. A name challenging for many to articulate, yet a location of paramount strategic importance, serving as the lifeblood for German panzer divisions and the aerial prowess of the Luftwaffe. Intelligence officers meticulously highlighted granular photographic details, revealing 9 colossal refinery complexes sprawling across the vast Wallachian plain, situated approximately 35 miles north of Bucharest. These were far more than mere industrial installations. They constituted the very jugular vein of Nazi Germany's war machine. The stark figures underscored their criticality. Ploesti's refineries were responsible for producing a staggering 60% of Germany's crude oil supply, equating to an immense 10 million tons annually. Every single gallon processed within these formidable complexes propelled the Wehrmacht's trucks across the Eastern Front, fueled the U-boats relentlessly stalking Allied convoys in the Atlantic, and kept the formidable Messerschmitt fighters aloft in defense of the Reich. American strategists had painstakingly re-evaluated the projections numerous times. Their conclusion was unequivocal. Should Ploesti cease operations, Germany's mechanized military would swiftly grind to a halt within a matter of months. Panzer divisions, once mobile and fearsome, would be rendered static, effectively becoming immobile defensive positions. The Luftwaffe, Germany's once dominant air force, would find itself permanently grounded. The entirety of the German military apparatus, from its smallest infantry unit to its most powerful armored formations, was critically dependent on the uninterrupted flow of Romanian oil emanating from those 9 vital refineries. Operation Tidal Wave, as it was christened, represented the most audacious and unconventional bombing strategy ever conceived. Diverging sharply from the established doctrine of high-altitude precision bombing, this mission mandated that B-24 Liberators would hurtle across the target area at an astonishingly low altitude, some skimming as low as 50 feet above the ground. The rationale behind this terrifying approach was both logical and perilous. By flying at such extreme low altitudes, the bombers could potentially evade German radar detection, thus ensuring the element of surprise remained intact. This surprise would then allow them to deploy delayed fuse bombs with unparalleled surgical precision directly onto the vulnerable cracking towers and massive storage tanks. The delayed fuses afforded the crews a mere 45 seconds to clear the immediate target zone before their own ordnance catastrophically detonated, maximizing destructive impact while minimizing immediate risk to the attacking aircraft. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. In theoretical terms, the plan was nothing short of brilliant. In practical execution, however, it demanded that crews pilot immense 4-engine bombers through a lethal gauntlet of anti-aircraft flak batteries, concealed machine gun nests, and menacing barrage balloons, all while maintaining speeds exceeding 200 mph with absolutely no margin for error. The mission planners were acutely aware that the human cost would be astronomical. Pre-mission intelligence estimates grimly projected losses that could approach 50%. Half of the formidable attacking force might not live to see another day. Yet the strategic calculus was brutally clear and undeniably stark. If Ploesti were to burn, the Third Reich's capacity to wage mechanized warfare would irrevocably collapse, a catastrophic blow from which it could not recover. The petroleum flowing through these critical refineries was not merely important, it was, in essence, irreplaceable. Germany had made concerted efforts to establish synthetic fuel production facilities, but these alternative sources were utterly incapable of matching Ploesti's prodigious output. Romania's immense geological endowment, vast petroleum deposits nestled beneath the Carpathian foothills, had inadvertently transformed into Hitler's most profound and perilous strategic dependency, a weakness that the Allies intended to exploit. A palpable silence descended upon the briefing tent as the officers unveiled the final, chilling details. 5 distinct bombardment groups were slated to participate in this monumental undertaking, a formidable contingent of 178 B-24 Liberators, each laden with 1,000-pound bombs. The aircraft would embark on an arduous 2,400-mile round trip, a significant portion of which would traverse hostile enemy territory without the crucial protection of fighter escort for the final, most perilous leg. Navigation would rely entirely on dead reckoning and visual landmarks, a testament to the primitive technology of the era. Radio silence would be absolute and strictly enforced. Each crew was tasked with committing to memory their specific refinery target, their precise approach path, and their designated escape route. There would be no opportunities for second chances, no possibility of aborting the mission once committed. The 9th Air Force was staking everything on the twin pillars of surprise and speed, coupled with the unyielding courage of men who fully comprehended they were flying headlong into the annals of history. Amidst the hundreds of airmen absorbing this momentous information sat a young pilot from Texas, his eyes intensely focused on the detailed target photographs. He was unaware at that moment, but his name would soon become irrevocably entwined with the legend of Ploesti. His pivotal decisions made high in the skies above Romania would ultimately define the impossible dichotomy between the imperative of mission completion and the primal instinct of self-preservation. The briefing concluded with routine weather reports and final synchronization details. Yet an unspoken profound truth hung heavily in the oppressive North African heat. For many of these brave men, this dawn was likely their last. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Herbert Hughes had celebrated his 24th birthday a mere 3 weeks prior. Born in Alexandria, Louisiana, and raised in San Antonio, Texas, he epitomized the quintessential young American ideal: athletic, meticulously methodical, and quietly self-assured. Before the war's brutal interruption, he had pursued pre-medical studies at the University of Texas, harboring aspirations of a career as a physician. The attack on Pearl Harbor, however, irrevocably altered his trajectory. Like thousands of his generation, Hughes eagerly enlisted, exchanging medical textbooks for demanding flight manuals. By 1943, he had earned his coveted Silver Wings and received an assignment to the 564th Bombardment Squadron, a component of the 389th Bombardment Group, a unit poised to execute the longest and lowest bombing mission ever undertaken in aviation history. Hughes commanded a 10-man crew aboard a B-24 Liberator, an aircraft pilots described with a perplexing blend of affection and profound frustration. The B-24 was undeniably a workhorse, robust and capable, but it was certainly not a thoroughbred. While it boasted the capacity to carry a greater bomb load over longer distances than the renowned B-17 Flying Fortress It was notoriously more challenging to fly, less forgiving of pilot error, and tragically earned the grim moniker, the Flying Coffin, due to its alarming propensity to explode when its fuel tanks sustained hits. The Liberator's distinctive high-mounted Davis wing provided it with exceptional range, a crucial attribute for reaching the distant Ploesti, yet paradoxically rendered it inherently unstable at low altitudes. Piloting a B-24 at a mere 50 feet demanded constant, unwavering attention, instantaneous, split-second corrections, and nerves of absolute steel. A single moment of inattention, or a momentary lapse in concentration, meant a catastrophic plunge into the earth at speeds exceeding 200 mph. Hughes's crew had undergone months of rigorous training together, initially at Biggs Field near El Paso, then at advanced operational bases in Florida, before their eventual deployment overseas. They had meticulously practiced low-altitude formation, flying over the expansive Gulf of Mexico, screaming across the water at such incredibly low heights that sea spray frequently lashed against their windscreens. They had rehearsed precisely timed bomb runs against mock targets in the desolate Arizona desert, meticulously perfecting the intricate coordination required between pilot, bombardier, and navigator. A synergy that could spell the difference between a direct hit on a crucial refinery tower and a miss of 100 yards, rendering their efforts futile. Each man understood his specific role with intimate precision. Technical Sergeant Robert Calloway diligently manned the top turret, his eyes ceaselessly scanning the skies for enemy fighters. Staff Sergeant Harold Angus crouched in the nose turret, poised to unleash suppressive fire against ground defenses. In the waist sections, 2 additional gunners would engage targets of opportunity, while simultaneously battling the brutal, deafening slipstream that roared through the open gun ports. The 389th Bombardment Group received its precise assignment during the final tension-filled mission briefings. Their specific objective was the Crédit Minier Refinery within the sprawling Ploesti complex, one of the smaller yet strategically vital installations. Intelligence photographs clearly depicted cracking towers soaring 150 feet into the sky, massive storage tanks holding millions of gallons of refined fuel, and intricate pipeline networks connecting various production facilities. The 389th was instructed to approach from the southwest, utilizing railroad tracks as a crucial visual landmark, then execute their bombing run along a precise heading, designed to take them directly over the refinery's most critical structures. The delayed action fuses would be set for a duration of 45 seconds, just enough time to allow the aircraft to escape the immediate blast radius. But crucially, insufficient time for German firefighting crews to defuse the bombs, ensuring maximum destruction. Hughes spent the evening preceding the mission meticulously writing letters home. He penned a heartfelt message to his wife Barbara, whom he had married just before his overseas deployment. He also wrote to his parents in San Antonio. The letters, adhering strictly to operational security protocols, made no mention of Ploesti or Romania. However, they conveyed the carefully cultivated optimism of a man who, deep down, understood the very real possibility of not returning. Other pilots passed the agonizing hours playing cards, meticulously checking and rechecking their equipment, or simply sitting in profound silence, each processing their fear and unwavering sense of duty in their own unique way. The chaplain held services for those who sought solace. Maintenance crews toiled tirelessly through the night, ensuring that every single aircraft was mechanically perfect, leaving no room for error. There would be no mechanical excuses, no technical failures to blame. Whatever transpired over Ploesti would be the direct result of human decisions made under unimaginable pressure. Dawn on August the 1st arrived, greeted by clear skies, perfect weather, tragically, for dying. Hughes and his crew gathered for their final equipment checks, parachutes, Mae West life vests, survival kits, sidearms, and maps printed on silk, designed to be easily concealed if they were shot down over enemy territory. Each man carried the grim knowledge that low-altitude bombing runs rendered parachute escape almost impossible. If an aircraft sustained a hit at 50 feet, there was no bailing out. One simply rode the aircraft down to its inevitable demise. Hughes conducted his pre-flight inspection with characteristic thoroughness, running his hands along control surfaces, meticulously checking fuel quantities, and testing the responsiveness of the controls. His Liberator, like all the others, was loaded to its maximum gross weight with fuel and ordnance. The aircraft would be sluggish on takeoff, extremely vulnerable during the long transit flight, and extraordinarily difficult to control if damaged. At approximately 0700 hours, engines began to cough to life across the sprawling Benghazi airfield. A formidable fleet of 178 bombers prepared to launch the most dangerous mission of the entire war. The thunderous roar of 712 Pratt and Whitney radial engines shattered the serene North African morning as the immense armada lifted off from multiple airfields surrounding Benghazi. Hughes eased his Liberator into formation, feeling the aircraft's heavy, ponderous response, every control input magnified by the immense weight of fuel and bombs. The B-24s climbed slowly, gradually forming into their designated groups and elements. The 389th Bombardment Group, under the command of Colonel Jack Wood, would attack as the second wave. Ahead of them flew the 376th and 93rd Groups, their targets being the Romania Americana and Columbia Aquila refineries. Behind them came the 98th and 44th Groups, assigned to the remaining objectives. The formation stretched for miles, a sky-darkening fleet that represented the zenith of American industrial might, and the unparalleled courage of 1,651 airmen. The courage of 1,651 airmen was a testament to their unwavering resolve. Their journey commenced with a northeasterly trajectory across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, maintaining a cruising altitude of 10,000 feet, to meticulously conserve their precious fuel reserves. The air crews, ensconced within their aircraft, settled into a state of monotonous vigilance, a tension born of extended flight operations. Their eyes incessantly swept across the array of instruments, ever watchful for any signs of enemy fighters, and they rotated their positions with disciplined regularity to stave off the insidious creeping of fatigue. Beneath them, the brilliant azure of the Mediterranean eventually yielded to the rugged contours of the Greek coastline, which then transitioned into the formidable jagged mountain ranges of Albania and Yugoslavia. Navigation during this perilous leg of the journey was a meticulous blend of pilotage, the art of identifying discernible landmarks and correlating them with detailed maps, and dead reckoning, a precise calculation of their current heading, airspeed, and the elapsed time. Throughout this entire phase, an absolute radio silence was rigorously enforced. German listening posts, strategically dispersed across the Balkan region, maintained an unceasing vigil over Allied radio frequencies, understanding that even a single transmission could instantly trigger a widespread alert among the formidable defenses arrayed across Romania. The first ominous sign, a harbinger that something had gone profoundly and catastrophically awry, manifested itself as the formation traversed the mighty Danube River. The lead navigator of the 376th Group, whose critical responsibility it was to meticulously guide the entire aerial armada, committed a grievous error at a designated checkpoint situated near the town of Ploesti. Instead of executing the prescribed left turn that would have set them on the planned northern approach towards Ploesti, he inadvertently veered the formation to the right, tragically diverting them southward. By the time this critical miscalculation was finally recognized, the leading groups had already strayed a staggering 40 miles off their intended course. The meticulously rehearsed timing, the synchronized arrival of 5 distinct groups poised to strike 9 refineries with simultaneous precision, the very bedrock of the operational surprise they so desperately sought, began to crumble into disarray. A select few group commanders, discerning the error, commendably corrected their courses. However, many others, in a misguided act of trust, simply followed the lead aircraft, operating under the dangerous assumption that its commander possessed some superior, unspoken knowledge. Consequently, the once cohesive formation fractured into disparate elements. Hughes and the 389th Group, steadfast in their conviction, resolutely pressed forward on their originally assigned heading, implicitly trusting the accuracy of their own navigation. Yet the irreparable damage had been inflicted. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. German radar stations, with their unblinking electronic eyes, had already detected the immense aerial formation as it made its fateful crossing of the Danube. Air raid sirens, their piercing wails a chilling prelude to impending destruction, began to reverberate across Ploesti at precisely 13:45 hours, a full 45 minutes before the initial bombs were ever intended to descend. The vital element of surprise, that crucial tactical advantage which had justified the perilous low-altitude tactics, had utterly evaporated. Romanian and German defenders, galvanized by the alarm, scrambled with frantic urgency to their battle stations. Flak batteries, their formidable 80-meter guns loaded with contact-fused shells, specifically engineered to detonate upon impact with an aircraft, stood ready. Machine gunners, their faces grim with resolve, meticulously prepared their weapons for the grim task ahead. Fighter units, a blur of motion, scrambled Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Romanian-flown IAR-80s into the sky. The defenders of Ploesti had, in previous encounters, faced bombing raids, but these had invariably been from high altitudes where flak trajectories and fighter intercepts adhered to predictable patterns. Low-altitude attacks, however, demanded a radically different tactical approach: direct fire, precise visual tracking, and rapid engagement at point-blank range, a terrifying prospect for any airman. As the 389th Group made its approach from the southern quadrant, Hughes, peering through the cockpit, could distinctly discern plumes of smoke ascending ahead of them. These thick, ominous black columns marked the locations where the lead groups had already commenced their devastating attacks. The original strategic blueprint had meticulously called for an approach from divergent vectors, a tactic designed to meticulously avoid any overlapping bombing patterns. However, the egregious navigation errors had catastrophically compressed the attack timeline. Instead of 5 distinct groups arriving in meticulously coordinated waves, aircraft were now converging on Ploesti from multiple directions simultaneously, a chaotic ballet that exponentially amplified the already inherent risk of mid-air collisions within the target area. Hughes, with a practiced eye, meticulously reviewed his instruments. Fuel consumption was tracking precisely according to the meticulously laid plan. All 4 engines hummed with normal operational efficiency, and the bomb bay doors mechanism had been thoroughly tested and stood ready for deployment. His bombardier, First Lieutenant John McCormick, lay prone within the confines of the nose compartment, his gaze intensely fixed upon the Norden bomb site, the intricate device that would ultimately guide their deadly ordnance to its designated target. The final, harrowing approach commenced at precisely 1410 hours. Hughes initiated a controlled descent, bringing the aircraft down to a mere 300 feet, the exact altitude specified for their bombing run. The Liberator, a behemoth of metal and machinery, shuddered perceptibly as it dropped into the ground effect, that peculiar aerodynamic cushion where wings generate additional lift when in close proximity to the surface. Every seasoned pilot instinctively understood that ground effect, a double-edged sword, possessed the power to either save a mission or bring about catastrophic failure. It undeniably rendered the aircraft more responsive, yet it simultaneously left absolutely zero margin for any error. The Romanian countryside, a verdant tapestry, flashed by beneath them with breathtaking speed. Fields stretched out to the horizon, roads snaked through the landscape, and quaint villages dotted the terrain where bewildered civilians gazed upwards in utter astonishment at the sight of American bombers thundering past at eye level. Ahead, through the obscuring pall of smoke and haze, the Crédit Minier refinery gradually materialized. Its cracking towers, stark against the sky, rose like skeletal fingers reaching towards the heavens. Storage tanks, their metallic surfaces gleaming in the afternoon sun, shimmered ominously. A complex network of pipelines crisscrossed the sprawling facility, resembling an intricate web of industrial veins. And encircling this entire industrial complex, muzzle flashes erupted with terrifying regularity as German defenders unleashed their full arsenal of weaponry. Hughes, his jaw set with grim determination, pushed the throttles forward, accelerating his aircraft directly into the fiery inferno that lay ahead. The sheer, concentrated firepower defending Ploesti far exceeded anything American intelligence had previously predicted. German defenders had meticulously positioned 80 E-8 flak batteries in interlocking fields of fire, their formidable barrels deliberately depressed to near horizontal angles, optimizing them for direct engagement with low-flying aircraft. Lighter 37mm and 20mm automatic cannons spewed torrents of explosive shells at cyclic rates approaching an astonishing 120 rounds per minute. Machine gun positions, strategically mounted on the towering refinery structures, around the vulnerable storage tanks, and along the perimeter roads, created lethal crossfire zones that no aircraft could hope to traverse unscathed. The Germans had even ingeniously positioned guns atop the tallest cracking towers, affording their gunners elevated firing positions with unobstructed commanding views of the approaching bombers. What the 389th Group, was relentlessly flying into was not merely anti-aircraft fire, it was, in its terrifying reality, a mechanized killing ground, meticulously designed for maximum destruction. Hughes registered the initial impacts before the accompanying sounds could even reach him. Sharp, metallic bangs, resonating ominously through the very airframe, signaled the moment when 20mm shells punched through the Liberator's thin aluminum skin. The B-24, unlike some of its more heavily armored counterparts, was not designed with extensive protective plating. Any additional weight would have inevitably curtailed its crucial range and bomb load capacity. Its primary protection lay in its speed and the fervent hope that the majority of incoming shells would mercifully pass through without striking anything vital. That desperate hope, however, was extinguished in a matter of seconds. A brutal burst of 37mm fire stitched a devastating line across the aircraft's belly, and Hughes immediately observed the fuel pressure fluctuating erratically on his No. 3 engine. Hydraulic fluid, a misty trail in its wake, began streaming profusely from severed lines, marking the aircraft's perilous journey. In the waist section, Sergeant Angus felt scorching hot metal fragments slice through the fuselage, narrowly missing his position by mere inches. Then came the incendiary rounds, a particularly dreaded form of ammunition. German gunners, with chilling foresight, had loaded their ammunition belts with a deadly concoction of armor-piercing, high-explosive, and incendiary shells, specifically engineered to ignite aviation fuel upon impact. When these incendiary rounds penetrated the Liberator's fuel tanks, strategically located within the wings and fuselage to maximize capacity, they did not merely puncture metal. They created immediate ignition sources within atmospheres already saturated with highly volatile fuel vapor. Hughes watched, horrified, as the fuel gauge for his No. 2 tank plummeted rapidly. Fuel was streaming uncontrollably from the wing, visibly shimmering as a telltale trail in the slipstream. The intercom, a lifeline of communication, erupted with a cacophony of urgent reports. "Fire in the bomb bay! Fuel streaming from the left wing! We're hit bad, Lieutenant!" The fire, initially perhaps no larger than a modest campfire, possessed an unlimited and terrifying fuel source. Aviation gasoline, with its octane rating of 100, is a highly refined and extraordinarily volatile substance. The hungry flames greedily fed on the fuel gushing from the punctured tanks, escalating from hesitant orange flickers to roaring, consuming sheets of fire that relentlessly wrapped around the bomb bay and began to spread aft along the fuselage. The B-24's very construction, its fabric-covered control surfaces, its aluminum-stressed skin, its magnesium components, provided an ideal, ready source of combustion material once temperatures reached their critical ignition points. Inside the inferno of the aircraft, temperatures within the bomb bay soared past an unbearable 500-degree ash. The heat was so intense, so all-encompassing, that the paint on internal structures began to visibly bubble and peel away, a grim testament to the escalating crisis. Hughes, with a desperate strength, wrestled with the controls as the fire damage inexorably began to compromise the aircraft's flight characteristics. The flames were not merely consuming structural elements. They were systematically destroying critical control cables, melting essential hydraulic lines, and warping metal components that were fundamental to the aircraft's structural integrity. The rudder response felt alarmingly mushy, a clear indication of partial cable damage. Aileron control, though still functional, now demanded an increasing amount of pressure to achieve the desired effect. Most critically, the relentless fire was advancing menacingly towards the bomb bay, where 10 1,000-pound delayed action bombs hung precariously from their shackles. These bombs were fully armed, their fuses meticulously set to detonate 45 seconds after their release. If the fire were to reach their fusing mechanisms or dangerously heat the explosive compounds beyond their critical temperatures, the entire aircraft would instantaneously vaporize in a cataclysmic airburst. A horrific end for all aboard. The Crédit Minier refinery now dominated Hughes's windscreen, a stark, terrifying vision. He had perhaps covered only half the distance from the initial point of engagement to the critical bomb release point. Yet it felt like an eternity, like countless miles had passed. Every agonizing second brought new and escalating damage. A brutal burst of flak shattered the co-pilot's side window, instantly filling the cockpit with a dangerous shower of debris and a howling gale of wind. Another shell exploded with devastating force near the No. 4 engine, causing alarming RPM fluctuations and sending a shower of metal fragments peppering the wing. The fire beneath the fuselage, a monstrous living entity, now extended at least 15 feet back from the bomb bay, its ferocious flames streaming in the 200 menopause slipstream like a massive, uncontrolled blowtorch. Other crews, monitoring the intercom network, could clearly see Hughes's Liberator, a fiery specter trailing fire and smoke, obviously mortally wounded, yet maintaining its unwavering course and altitude directly towards the target. The crew faced a stark, horrifying reality. They were piloting a burning aircraft, heavily laden with high explosives, directly through the most concentrated anti-aircraft fire in all of Europe. The logical decision, the decision that every primal survival instinct screamed for, was to immediately salvo the bombs, execute a sharp bank away from the inferno of the refinery, rapidly gain altitude, and attempt an emergency landing or a desperate bailout before the relentless fire consumed the aircraft entirely. Air Force regulations explicitly authorize commanders to abort missions when aircraft damage unequivocally threatened crew survival. No one, absolutely no one, would have questioned such a decision. No one would have dared to label it as cowardice. But that decision, that act of self-preservation, meant their precious bombs would fall harmlessly into the Romanian farmland below. It meant their designated target would survive intact, its industrial heart still beating. It meant Ploesti's refineries would continue their relentless task of fueling the German war machine, a grim prospect they could not countenance. The critical juncture for Hughes, though fleeting, seemed to stretch into an immeasurable duration, a mere 3 seconds containing an eternity of consequence. Soaring at an altitude of 300 feet and hurtling forward at 210 miles per hour, this brief 3-second interval encompassed a distance of almost 1,000 feet, equivalent to the combined length of 3 American football fields. Within this incredibly short time frame, Hughes was compelled to simultaneously confront and analyze a multitude of dire circumstances. The raging inferno was intensifying with alarming speed, already beginning to undermine the aircraft's fundamental structural integrity. With each passing moment, the chances of his crew surviving plummeted precipitously. The volatile ordnance nestled within the bomb bay represented a grave and imminent threat, a literal countdown to an inevitable explosion, as either intense heat or a catastrophic structural collapse would ultimately trigger their detonation. Reports from his navigator indicated a growing number of casualties in the aircraft's central waist section, while his engineer's urgent shouts underscored critical deficiencies in fuel reserves. Despite every logical assessment advocating for an immediate abandonment of the mission, Hughes carried a profound understanding gleaned from strategic briefings held in Benghazi, an insight that superseded mere rational thought. He fully grasped the intricate strategic calculus underpinning Operation Tidal Wave, recognizing that American military strategists had consciously accepted potential losses of up to half the assault force, deeming such a sacrifice justifiable given the immense strategic dividends anticipated. The ultimate destruction of the Ploesti refinery, a vital Axis target, carried monumental strategic implications. Should the Ploesti complex be successfully incinerated, it was projected that the Eastern Front, a pivotal theater of war, would suffer a catastrophic collapse. Furthermore, the obliteration of Ploesti would significantly diminish the operational capacity of the Luftwaffe, thereby allowing Allied bomber formations to conduct their missions with substantially reduced aerial opposition. Crucially, the successful execution of this objective held the potential to accelerate the conclusion of the global conflict by months or even years, thereby preserving the lives of countless tens of thousands. Consequently, the core objective of this perilous undertaking transcended the individual survival of any single airman. Rather, it hinged entirely upon whether the collective efforts of 151 American airmen could inflict a level of damage so profound and strategically vital as to unequivocally warrant their immense personal sacrifice. Hughes possessed a crucial comprehension regarding the operational mechanics of delayed action fuses, a detail that imbued his impending decision with even greater gravity. The formidable 1,000-pound bombs stowed within his aircraft's bay were specifically configured to detonate a full 45 seconds following their deployment. This deliberate delay served a dual strategic purpose. Firstly, it afforded the attacking aircraft sufficient time to egress from the immediate blast radius, safeguarding it from the ensuing explosion. Secondly, and perhaps more insidiously, it effectively thwarted any immediate attempts by German firefighting crews to mitigate the resultant damage. A conventional bomb, exploding either mid-descent or instantaneously upon impact, presented a challenge that could be addressed with standard firefighting apparatus. However, a bomb designed to penetrate deeply into vital infrastructure before detonating almost a minute later, specifically after emergency personnel had converged upon the impact zone, was engineered to inflict maximum chaos. Such a delayed explosion would inevitably cause significant casualties among the initial response teams and allow nascent fires to gain a firm foothold, escalating their destructive potential before any meaningful suppression efforts could even commence. Thus, these ingeniously designed delayed fuses transmuted each individual bomb from a mere explosive device into a sophisticated strategic weapon, meticulously crafted to maximize and prolong structural damage and operational disruption. As we delve deeper into this harrowing account, we urge you to stay with us and witness the full conclusion of this compelling narrative. Your support, through a simple like and subscription, would be profoundly appreciated. We also invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you are from and what resonates with you most about the crucial topic explored in this video. The intricate layout of the bombing trajectory introduced yet another critical variable into Hughes's complex decision-making process. The extensive Ploesti Romanesque refinery sprawled across a roughly rectangular expanse, measuring approximately 800 yards in length. The meticulously devised assault strategy for the 389th Group mandated an approach along the refinery's elongated axis, followed by the deployment of bombs in a highly precise, sequential pattern. This deliberate method was designed to systematically spread explosive impacts across the most vital components of the facility, targeting crucial infrastructure such as cracking towers, vast storage tanks, essential pumping stations, and intricate pipeline manifolds. To successfully execute this specific pattern of destruction, the bombardier required very particular approach angles and an exact sequence of release timing. Should Hughes choose to abort the mission at this critical juncture, veering away from the designated target, his bombardier would be rendered incapable of achieving the necessary release parameters. While the bombs might still strike the expansive refinery complex, there was a high probability they would impact only on its less critical outer edges, causing minimal strategic damage. Or worse, missing the entire facility altogether. Within the confines of the ablaze Liberator, Hughes's dedicated crew members were keenly aware of the profound dilemma their pilot was confronting. Several historical accounts indicate that co-pilot Second Lieutenant Harold Wheatley actively advocated for an immediate cessation of the mission, asserting that their obligation had been fulfilled merely by penetrating so deeply into the formidable enemy defenses. In contrast, other members of the crew maintained a resolute silence, implicitly placing their unwavering trust in their commander's ultimate decision, even as the voracious flames relentlessly devoured the very aircraft around them. Meanwhile, Sergeant Calloway, positioned steadfastly in the top turret, continued his relentless engagement with ground targets, his formidable twin 50-caliber machine guns rhythmically pounding enemy flak emplacements, despite the absolute certainty of retaliatory fire. This unwavering commitment epitomized the unwritten covenant of crew coordination. Every individual was expected to meticulously execute their assigned duties until an explicit command to cease was issued, or until physical incapacitation rendered their performance utterly impossible. The rigorous training Hughes had undergone at Biggs Field, coupled with his extensive months of disciplined formation flying, had instilled within him a profound degree of muscle memory that functioned entirely independently of conscious deliberation. His hands, with an almost instinctual precision, continuously executed subtle micro-corrections on the yoke, steadfastly maintaining the aircraft's level flight path despite the disruptive, asymmetric thrust emanating from damaged engines and the severe aerodynamic turbulence caused by extensive battle damage. Concurrently, his feet deftly manipulated the rudder pedals, expertly counteracting the aircraft's persistent tendency to yaw uncontrollably towards its severely compromised left wing. His gaze, in a meticulously practiced and almost automatic pattern, swept across the array of instruments, the distant horizon, and the looming target, absorbing critical information without the need for deliberate cognitive processing. This remarkable level of automated competency effectively cleared crucial mental space, allowing him to focus on the monumental strategic decision that would ultimately determine the very course of his life and death. The formidable Ploesti Romanesque refinery now lay less than 30 seconds directly ahead. The ravenous flames originating from the fuselage fire cast an ominous, flickering orange glow that reflected intensely upon the interior of Hughes's windscreen, severely impeding his ability to accurately discern the instrument readings. The ambient temperature within the cockpit had escalated to an almost intolerable level, soaring beyond 150 degrees Fahrenheit, rendering metal surfaces so searingly hot that direct contact would instantly cause burns to exposed skin. Dense, acrid smoke permeated every crew compartment, compelling the airmen to gasp for breath through makeshift cloth masks, desperately soaked in any available liquid to filter the suffocating fumes. The aircraft itself was visibly succumbing to its wounds, progressively disintegrating piece by agonizing piece under the relentless, dual onslaught of aggressive enemy fire and the devastating internal combustion raging within its own structure. With an unwavering resolve, Hughes finalized his momentous decision. They would, against all odds, press on and complete the critical bomb run. Defying the anguished, protesting screams emanating from his grievously damaged engines, Hughes deliberately advanced the throttles. The number 3 engine was visibly struggling, operating with an alarming roughness, its cylinder head temperature relentlessly surging into the critical red zone. Concurrently, the number 2 engine exhibited a precipitous drop in oil pressure, a direct consequence of vital lubricant hemorrhaging from lines perforated by shrapnel. Yet remarkably, the residual power generated by the remaining engines proved just sufficient to sustain a speed of 210 miles per hour, the precisely calculated velocity deemed optimal to provide his bombardier with the most advantageous conditions for an accurate and effective bomb release. Within the cramped confines of the nose compartment, Lieutenant McCormick remained stoically hunched over his Norden bomb sight, meticulously effecting the final, critical adjustments. This arduous task was compounded by the stinging smoke that irritated his eyes and the intense heat that rendered the metallic eyepiece almost unbearable to the touch. The Norden itself represented a pinnacle of mechanical computing, a true marvel of precision engineering, designed to calculate exact bomb release points by intricately factoring in variables such as altitude, airspeed, prevailing wind conditions, and the subtle motion of the target. Operating at a mere 300 feet, the margin for error in its complex calculations was virtually non-existent, demanding absolute perfection. Their ultimate trajectory brought them directly above the refinery's most heavily fortified primary defenses. German artillery crews, keenly identifying the damaged bomber as a vulnerable and inviting target, converged their concentrated firepower upon it. Tracer rounds, luminous streaks of phosphorus-laden ammunition, specifically employed to assist gunners in refining their targeting, interwove to form a dazzling, almost tangible web of light, appearing so dense one might imagine walking upon it. Each individual tracer round signified the discharge of 4 or 5 conventional projectiles, illustrating that the visible fusillade represented only a small fraction of the sheer volume of metal hurtling through the air. The cacophony within the aircraft escalated to an indescribable pitch, a relentless, continuous metallic hammering punctuated by deafening explosive bangs as larger caliber shells found their devastating mark. Despite sustaining shrapnel wounds, the left waist gunner, Staff Sergeant Henry Leckworth, valiantly persisted in firing, his formidable 50 caliber weapon contributing to the suppressive barrage, even as his flight suit became saturated with his own blood. McCormick's voice, strained, but resolute, crackled through the intercom system. "Bomb bay doors open." Hughes distinctly felt the entire aircraft convulse and shudder violently as powerful hydraulic rams forcefully propelled the massive doors downwards, plunging them into the turbulent slipstream. This critical action instantly triggered severe and immediate repercussions for the raging fire. The bomb bay, which had previously been a semi-enclosed compartment, was abruptly transformed into an exposed channel, through which ferocious 200 mph winds now relentlessly funneled oxygen directly into the heart of the flames. The inferno, thus supercharged, erupted with terrifying intensity, escalating from a localized blowtorch effect into a full-blown, raging conflagration. Temperatures within the bomb bay surged dramatically, soaring past 800 Fahrenheit. Paint spontaneously combusted, and various rubber components began to melt under the extreme heat. The very bomb shackles, designed to secure the ordnance, started to glow a menacing cherry red from the intense radiant heat. Crucially, the structural members providing support to the bomb bay, which were fundamental, load-bearing elements of the fuselage, commenced losing their vital strength as the aluminum material neared its catastrophic failure temperature of approximately 1,000 Fahrenheit. The core primary structures of the pesty Romanesque refinery now glided directly beneath the nose of the bomber. McCormick, with laser-like focus, meticulously tracked the initial cracking tower through the precise crosshairs of his bomb sight, made a final crucial adjustment for any lateral drift, and then initiated the critical release sequence. "Bombs away!" he announced. The Liberator immediately lurched upward with a sudden, pronounced jolt as a colossal 10,000 pounds of ordnance plummeted freely from its belly, the aircraft instantly becoming lighter by the approximate weight of a compact automobile. The bombs descended in a carefully orchestrated train, a precisely spaced string of explosives designed to impact systematically across the entire length of the refinery. Each individual 1,000-pound bomb contained a formidable 650 pounds of trional, a potent explosive compound that ingeniously combined TNT with aluminum powder, thereby generating both devastating blast overpressure and powerful incendiary effects. The delayed fuses, as designed, commenced their 45-second countdown, the precise instant the bombs successfully cleared their shackles. Hughes now had a mere 45 seconds to extricate his aircraft from the immediate vicinity before his own deployed ordnance detonated directly beneath him. Yet, a new and perilous complication arose. The bomb bay doors stubbornly refused to retract and close. The intricate hydraulic system responsible for their operation had suffered a catastrophic failure, having lost all its vital fluid through severed lines. Consequently, the doors remained stubbornly agape, generating an immense amount of aerodynamic drag that severely impeded the aircraft's forward motion, and, more critically, continuing to funnel a relentless supply of oxygen-rich airflow directly into the ravenous flames. Despite Hughes pushing the throttles to their absolute maximum, the aircraft's speed began a perilous descent, 205 miles per hour, then 200, then a critical 195. At such dangerously low speeds and altitudes, the heavily laden Liberator was rapidly approaching its perilous stall speed. Should its airspeed dip below 185 miles per hour, the aircraft would inevitably plummet from the sky like an unyielding stone. In a desperate maneuver, Hughes slightly lowered the nose, making a calculated and perilous exchange of precious altitude for vital speed. The altimeter spun rapidly backward, 250 feet, 200 feet, then an alarming 175 feet. Romanian civilians situated on the roads in the vicinity of the refinery could distinctly observe the burning bomber thundering past at what appeared to be eye level. A horrifying spectacle of flames streaming a full 30 feet behind its ravaged fuselage. The aircraft, a B-24 Liberator, endured relentless enemy fire as it completed its bombing run, clearing the far perimeter of the refinery. German defenders maintained a constant barrage, and a devastating burst of 88 mm flak shells, comparable in size to small artillery rounds, detonated violently near the right wing. These explosions tore through the fuel tanks, igniting fresh fires, and inflicted direct hits on the right inboard engine. Metal fragments from the blasts severed critical control linkages and fuel lines, causing the engine to seize abruptly. The pilot, Hughes, immediately felt a powerful, asymmetric thrust, attempting to wrench the aircraft sharply to the right. With immense physical exertion, he pressed hard on the left rudder pedal, utilizing the full authority of the rudder to counteract the violent yaw. The strain was extraordinary, controlling a severely damaged multi-engine bomber at such a low altitude demanded a level of strength that left his muscles screaming in protest and sweat pouring from his body, an inevitable consequence of the intense heat from the fires and the ensuing dehydration. As the bomber struggled onward, the delayed fuse bombs began their catastrophic work behind them. The initial detonation rocked a pumping station, its blast wave rupturing high-pressure fuel lines and sending a spectacular geyser of refined gasoline soaring 100 feet into the air. The subsequent bomb struck a massive storage tank containing an estimated 50,000 gallons of aviation fuel. This was no mere explosion. The tank transformed into a devastating fuel-air bomb as the vaporized gasoline mingled with atmospheric oxygen before igniting with incredible force. The resulting overpressure waves shattered windows 3 miles away and created a distinctive mushroom cloud that was clearly visible from Bucharest. Successive bombs systematically targeted the cracking towers, each explosion collapsing metal structures valued at millions of Reichsmarks and utterly irreplaceable during wartime. Within a mere 90 seconds, the pesty Romanesque refinery, a vital industrial complex, was utterly transformed into an inferno that would rage uncontrollably for 3 days. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We would be truly grateful for your like and subscription. Please also consider leaving a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Hughes, battling against overwhelming odds, finally cleared the refinery perimeter, but his aircraft was disintegrating around him. The relentless fire had now engulfed the entire bomb bay area and was relentlessly spreading, advancing both forward towards the cockpit and aft towards the tail section. Essential control cables, responsible for the operation of the rudders, elevators, and ailerons, were stretching taut and fraying as their protective housings melted away under the intense heat. The aluminum skin of the fuselage had burned through in multiple locations, creating gaping holes through which flames vented outwards. From the ground, horrified witnesses reported seeing the B-24 as a veritable flying bonfire, trailing a quarter-mile plume of smoke and fire. The fact that it remained airborne at all defied all principles of aerodynamic logic. It was only Hughes's continuous and desperate control inputs that prevented the dying bomber from rolling inverted or plummeting uncontrollably into the Romanian countryside. The crew's predicament had escalated far beyond desperation. The waist gunners were engaged in a futile battle against the raging fires with handheld extinguishers, their efforts minuscule, against an inferno fed by hundreds of gallons of high-octane aviation fuel. The radio operator had abandoned his station, which was situated directly above the bomb bay, and had become utterly uninhabitable as the deck plates heated to temperatures that caused severe burns on contact. Meanwhile, the navigator was frantically attempting to chart an escape route towards neutral Turkey, a distant objective roughly 400 miles to the southeast. However, every individual aboard the aircraft understood with grim certainty that they did not possess 400 miles of flight time remaining. In all likelihood, they probably did not even have 40 miles. The structural integrity holding the Liberator together was now measured in mere minutes, perhaps even seconds. The combined destructive forces of metal fatigue, extensive fire damage, and severe battle damage were inexorably tearing the aircraft apart. In a desperate attempt to provide his crew with an opportunity to bail out, Hughes endeavored to gain altitude. He pulled back on the yoke, sacrificing precious airspeed for a meager climb. The aircraft responded sluggishly, managing a pitiful climb rate of perhaps 50 feet per minute, a stark contrast to its normal 500. At an altitude of 600 feet, he made the agonizing decision that his crew needed to abandon the aircraft. His voice, remarkably calm and professional despite the dire circumstances, came over the intercom. "Prepare to bail out. That's an order." In the rear of the aircraft, crew members began moving towards the escape hatches, but bailing out of a B-24 at low altitude, with the aircraft ablaze and violently maneuvering, was an almost impossible feat. The proper bailout procedure demanded that the aircraft be straight and level, allowing jumpers to safely clear the tail surfaces. This aircraft, however, was neither straight nor level, and was unlikely to become either. At approximately 14 to 18 hours, a mere 8 minutes after the initial anti-aircraft impacts, the structural failure that Hughes had been so valiantly fighting against became catastrophic. A primary fuselage frame member in the bomb bay area, severely weakened by the intense fire and overloaded by the stresses of maneuvering, buckled decisively. The Liberator's fuselage design relied heavily on circular frame members to maintain its cross-sectional shape and to transfer loads effectively from the wings to the tail. When one frame failed, the adjacent frames were subjected to increased loads for which they were not designed, initiating a rapid cascade failure. The fuselage began to break in half at the bomb bay, with the tail section sagging precariously downwards as structural continuity completely failed. Control cables snapped under the strain and hydraulic lines ruptured entirely. The aircraft became utterly unflyable. Hughes, with an unwavering resolve, fought to keep the nose of the aircraft elevated, attempting a crash landing that might offer his crew some chance of survival. Ahead lay open farmland, vast wheat fields that had been harvested, leaving behind relatively flat stubble. It was far from ideal, but it was undeniably preferable to plunging into trees or buildings. He cut power to the remaining functioning engines, aiming to mitigate the risk of fire upon impact. The Liberator descended rapidly, its broken back rendering controlled flight impossible. The tail section dragged at an unnatural angle, creating immense drag and asymmetric forces. At perhaps 300 feet altitude and an airspeed of 140 mph, the aircraft was falling, more than it was flying. The catastrophic impact occurred in a field approximately 7 miles north of Ploesti, near the village of Tundurai. The Liberator struck the ground with immense force, its forward fuselage plowing into the soft earth, decelerating the wreckage from 140 mph to zero in roughly 200 feet. The forces involved, multiple dozens of G-forces sustained for several agonizing seconds, exceeded human survivability limits, even with restraints. The remaining fuel in the wing tanks and the residual fuel coating internal surfaces ignited instantaneously upon impact. The wreckage exploded, not from bombs, but from the aircraft's own fuel, creating a massive fireball that incinerated the entire forward fuselage section. Hughes, still in the pilot seat attempting to control the uncontrollable, perished instantly. Co-pilot Wheatley died beside him. Bombardier McCormick, Navigator Second Lieutenant Robert Benny, and Engineer Technical Sergeant Joseph Militello also tragically perished in the forward section of the aircraft. In the tail section, which had separated during the chaotic descent, several crew members miraculously survived the initial impact. The tail struck the ground separately from the forward fuselage, its impact forces slightly less catastrophic, and its distance from the main fuel fire provided a crucial chance for survival. Tail Gunner Staff Sergeant Arthur Melrose crawled from the wreckage with severe injuries, but he was alive. Radio Operator Technical Sergeant Robert Barker emerged with burns and fractures. Waist Gunner Leshworth, who had already been wounded by shrapnel during the bombing run, survived with additional injuries. These men, along with 2 others who managed to escape the wreck, became prisoners of war. They would endure the next 2 years in Romanian and German prison camps, eventually being repatriated when Allied forces liberated those facilities in 1945. The final accounting of the Ploesti raid revealed costs that stunned even the commanders who had meticulously planned for catastrophic losses. Of the 178 B-24 Liberators that departed North Africa on August 1, 1943, only 124 managed to return to base. A staggering 54 aircraft were destroyed, either shot down over the target, crashed while attempting emergency landings, or ditched in the Mediterranean when fuel exhaustion rendered reaching friendly territory impossible. The human cost was even more sobering. 660 American airmen became casualties. Of these, 310 were killed in action, their bodies either recovered from crash sites across Romania or lost forever in the vastness of the Mediterranean. Another 108 became prisoners of war, facing years of brutal captivity. A further 42 wounded airmen made it back to base, many with injuries that would prematurely end their flying careers. However, the strategic question that held the most significance was not merely the cost, but whether that immense cost had yielded meaningful results. Initial reconnaissance flights conducted over Ploesti in the days following the raid provided a definitive answer. The bombing had inflicted substantial and widespread damage across the refinery complex. The Ploesti Romanesque refinery, Hughes's specific target, suffered approximately 60% destruction of its refining capacity. Storage tanks were obliterated, cracking towers collapsed into ruins, pipeline networks were ruptured, and administrative facilities were completely destroyed. The Romana Americana refinery, targeted by the 93rd Bombardment Group, sustained similar levels of damage. Overall, the 9 refinery complexes comprising Ploesti lost roughly 40% of their total production capacity. In concrete terms, this translated into a reduction of Germany's oil supply by approximately 240,000 tons per month. The damage had immediate and tangible tactical effects on German operations. Luftwaffe units across Europe received significantly reduced fuel allocations in September and October 1943, compelling them to decrease their sortie rates against Allied bombing raids. Panzer divisions operating on the Eastern Front were forced to adhere to strict fuel rationing, severely limiting their operational mobility and making large-scale counter-offensives far more difficult to execute. German military planners were consequently compelled to accelerate their synthetic fuel production programs, diverting critical resources from other vital war industries. The Romanian government, deeply concerned about the prospect of future raids, demanded increased German air defense assets, thereby pulling flak batteries and fighter squadrons from other crucial fronts. The strategic ripple effects emanating from Ploesti's damage permeated throughout the entire Nazi war economy. Despite the initial devastation, the operational disruption proved to be quite transient. German engineering teams, supported by diligent Romanian laborers, commenced diligent reconstruction activities almost immediately following the assault. The Nazi government placed an extraordinary emphasis on the swift restoration of the refinery complexes, allocating vital resources, such as robust structural steel, intricate specialized piping, and essential electrical apparatus, materials that were in critically short supply across other pressing wartime initiatives. The formidable combination of Germany's advanced technical proficiency in petroleum refining and the dedicated efforts of the Romanian workforce demonstrated remarkable efficacy. Consequently, by November 1943, a mere 3 months subsequent to the aerial bombardment, the facilities at Ploesti had successfully recuperated approximately 80% of their original production capabilities from before the attack. By March 1944, these crucial refineries were functioning at an impressive 90% of their capacity. Concurrently, the German forces had considerably bolstered their aerial protection, implementing supplementary flak batteries, strengthening fighter squadrons with increased personnel and aircraft, and strategically positioning smoke generators designed to effectively conceal the targets during any subsequent aerial assaults. The astonishing speed of this recuperation compelled American strategic strategists to acknowledge some inconvenient realities regarding the efficacy of isolated singular missions. An extensive bombing operation that resulted in the loss of 54 aircraft and incurred 660 casualties had regrettably inflicted damage that endured for only a matter of months. From a purely immediate perspective, the cost-benefit analysis of such an endeavor appeared highly dubious, unless the entire undertaking was meticulously assessed within the wider framework of the ongoing strategic bombing campaign. The stark truth that emerged was that the Ploesti complex necessitated a campaign of relentless, sustained bombardments, multiple successive missions executed over an extended period, designed to thwart any attempts at reconstruction and systematically diminish its productive output. This pivotal insight profoundly impacted the evolution and refinement of subsequent American bombing doctrine. We encourage our viewers to remain with us through to the conclusion of this insightful video. Your engagement, expressed through a like and a subscription to our channel, would be deeply appreciated. Furthermore, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comment section below, letting us know where you are tuning in from and what your perspective is on the significant historical topic discussed in this presentation. Consequently, when American air power revisited the Ploesti region in 1944, their approach was fundamentally altered. They did not arrive for a solitary strike, but rather initiated a relentless barrage, executing 24 distinct aerial assaults between April and August of that year. These systematic campaigns ultimately dismantled the refinery infrastructure to such an extent that it surpassed Germany's capacity for restoration. The tactical insights gleaned from Operation Tidal Wave profoundly reconfigured the broader American bombing strategy. The perilous tactic of employing an extremely low-altitude approach, despite its theoretical advantage in bomb precision, had demonstrated an catastrophic susceptibility when confronted by robust and concentrated enemy defenses. Subsequent post-mission evaluations unequivocally determined that the attrition rates in heavily defended target zones would consistently prove untenable for aircraft operating at altitudes beneath 10,000 feet. As a direct consequence, future bombing missions reverted to high-altitude operations, despite the acknowledged trade-off in terms of diminished accuracy, embracing the principle that errant bombs were a far more acceptable outcome than the destruction of valuable aircraft and the tragic loss of their courageous crews. The fateful raid of August 1, 1943, thus marked the conclusive instance wherein American heavy bombers would deliberately engage a significantly fortified target at such perilously low altitudes throughout the entirety of the European conflict. The enduring prominence of this particular mission within the annals of military history was cemented not solely by its groundbreaking tactical methodologies or its profound strategic repercussions, but equally by the extraordinary individual acts of profound valor that permeated the entire operation. The sheer density of courage exhibited by the air crews above Ploesti was truly unparalleled. Ultimately, the United States Air Force would bestow 5 Medals of Honor in recognition of the exceptional bravery displayed throughout Operation Tidal Wave, a greater number than for any other solitary mission conducted within the European theater of war. These prestigious commendations were specifically awarded to individuals who strikingly embodied the mission's most salient characteristic: an unwavering resolve to press onward towards their designated targets, even in the face of catastrophic damage to their aircraft, a profound decision to prioritize the successful completion of their critical assignment above their own personal survival, and a stoic acceptance of certain demise in order to realize vital strategic objectives. Second Lieutenant Lloyd Herbert Hughes was posthumously honored with the Medal of Honor on August 1, 1944, precisely 1 year to the day following his tragic demise above the Romanian landscape. The official citation accompanying this distinguished award, personally endorsed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, encapsulated the profound essence of his ultimate heroic decision through concise and impactful military language. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy on 1 August 1943. On this date, Lieutenant Hughes served as pilot of a heavy bombardment aircraft participating in a dangerous low-level attack against enemy oil refineries at Ploesti, Romania. Positioned within the final segment of the attacking formation, his aircraft endured successive impacts from intense anti-aircraft barrages and subsequently erupted into a fiery inferno. Despite being acutely cognizant that his bomber had become, in essence, a flying incendiary device, and that his remaining time was tragically limited to mere seconds, he resolutely chose to persist on his trajectory towards the objective. This decision was made to avoid imperiling the integrity of his formation's critical bombing pass. Demonstrating exceptional piloting prowess and indomitable courage, he skillfully guided the blazing aircraft directly over the designated target area and successfully deployed his ordnance, achieving precise and impactful hits. Instantly following the release of the bombs, the severely compromised aircraft catastrophically disintegrated. Through this unparalleled act of supreme heroism and a valiant disregard for his own personal safety, Lieutenant Hughes unequivocally ensured the successful accomplishment of his formation's vital mission. The remaining 4 Medals of Honor awarded for the Ploesti operation were bestowed upon individuals whose narratives of bravery strikingly mirrored that of Hughes, each illustrating an unwavering and sustained fortitude amidst utterly insurmountable circumstances. Colonel John Riley Kane, serving as the commanding officer of the 98th Bombardment Group, resolutely advanced his assault, even though his lead aircraft sustained grievous damage and his formation experienced significant disarray due to the pervasive smoke and relentless ground fire. Second Lieutenant Lloyd D. Hughes, distinct from Lloyd H. Hughes, also garnered commendation for steadfastly preserving the cohesion and integrity of his formation, notwithstanding the fatal damage inflicted upon his own aircraft. Major John L. Jerstad, who had already fulfilled his mandatory combat tour and voluntarily elected to participate in the Ploesti mission, fully aware of its probable fatal outcome, tragically perished while gallantly leading his squadron through the target area. Colonel Leon W. Johnson expertly guided the 44th Bombardment Group through an onslaught of devastating enemy fire to successfully neutralize his designated refinery, ultimately managing to pilot his severely crippled bomber back to base despite sustaining catastrophic damage. The conferral of 5 Medals of Honor stemming from a solitary day of combat was an unparalleled occurrence, a distinction that would remain unsurpassed throughout the entirety of World War II. The sheer density of these distinguished accolades served as an emphatic acknowledgment that Ploesti represented an anomaly within the sphere of military aviation, an operation where conventional benchmarks of courage and adherence to duty were simply insufficient to fully articulate the extraordinary events that transpired. The formal citations accompanying these Medals of Honor often resonated with variations on a singular, profound theme. Aviators who possessed the grim certainty of their impending demise, yet resolutely pressed onward towards their objectives. Commanding officers who fearlessly spearheaded the charge from the vanguard, even when more secure alternatives were available. And air crews who meticulously upheld discipline and operational functionality even as their aircraft were engulfed in flames around them. These were not fleeting instances of bravery, quantifiable in mere seconds. Rather, they constituted prolonged manifestations of unyielding resolve, extending over minutes, with each passing second marking a reaffirmation of their choices until the finality of death rendered any further decision impossible. The personal belongings of Hughes were respectfully repatriated to his widow, Barbara, residing in San Antonio. Included among these cherished items were the poignant letters he had penned on the eve of the mission, correspondence that vividly portrayed a man who not only comprehended the inherent perils, but also stoically embraced them as indispensable costs for achieving strategic imperatives. Barbara Hughes eventually entered into a second marriage, Yet she meticulously preserved her first husband's Medal of Honor, exhibiting it in a place of conspicuous prominence, thereby ensuring that her children would fully grasp the profound nature of their father's ultimate sacrifice. The medal itself, characterized by its delicate light blue ribbon, supporting a distinguished bronze star suspended beneath an eagle emblem, subsequently occupied positions of profound respect and honor, initially within the sanctity of family residences, and later within the hallowed halls of military museums, where it continues to serve as a powerful educational artifact for successive generations, illustrating the immense human cost associated with strategic bombing campaigns. The enduring legacy of the Ploesti raid transcended mere commendations and grim casualty figures, embedding itself deeply within the very bedrock of contemporary air power doctrine. To this day, military strategists meticulously examine the events of August 1, 1943, treating it as a quintessential case study encompassing intricate mission planning, daring tactical innovation, and the absolute boundaries of human courage when pitted against formidable and concentrated defensive systems. The operation unequivocally showcased that precision bombing possessed the potential to yield significant strategic outcomes, yet it simultaneously underscored the critical necessity for a level of coordination, precise timing, and intelligence gathering that stretched the operational capabilities of World War II to their absolute zenith. It definitively established that low-altitude bombing, despite its theoretical appeal, proved to be virtually suicidal when confronted by well-prepared and robust enemy defenses. Crucially, the mission forged fundamental principles concerning acceptable attrition rates in the relentless pursuit of overarching strategic objectives, principles that steadfastly continue to shape and inform military planning decisions even into the unfolding landscape of the 21st century. The name of Hughes remains perpetually etched in memory through a multitude of commemorative tributes. Biggs Army Airfield, situated in proximity to El Paso, the very location where he underwent his rigorous training, has dedicated a solemn memorial plaque enumerating the brave individuals who trained there and subsequently made the ultimate sacrifice in combat. The historical narrative of the 389th Bombardment Group, meticulously preserved within various unit museums and through the diligent efforts of veteran associations, conspicuously highlights Hughes's final heroic mission as the quintessential embodiment of the group's unwavering motto, anything, anytime, anywhere. Furthermore, the esteemed Air Force Academy incorporates Operation Tidal Wave into its comprehensive curriculum on military ethics and the critical process of decision-making under extreme duress, utilizing Hughes's profound choice as an instructive case study, exploring the intricate balance between one's duty and the innate instinct for self-preservation. A more encompassing inquiry that persistently shadows the historical account of Ploesti concerns the fundamental justification of the immense sacrifice involved. Did the tragic loss of 660 American lives genuinely secure a strategic advantage of sufficient magnitude to validate the entirety of the mission? The conclusive answer to this profound question is contingent upon the specific temporal frame of reference employed. In the immediate aftermath, spanning from August through October 1943, the inflicted damage upon Ploesti undeniably exerted a tangible influence on German operational capabilities, compelling significant tactical adaptations and the burdensome diversion of crucial resources. However, in the medium term, encompassing the period from November 1943 through March 1944. The diligent German reconstruction efforts largely nullified much of the initial damage, thereby suggesting that the mission failed to secure enduring strategic effects. Conversely, when Ploesti is assessed within the long-term perspective, as an integral component of the protracted and sustained bombing campaign that ultimately obliterated Germany's oil production capacity, the August 1943 raid proved pivotal in establishing novel tactics, pinpointing critical vulnerabilities, and powerfully demonstrating Allied resolve, thereby laying the essential groundwork for the decisively successful raids executed in 1944. The concluding moments of Hughes's life, as he piloted a blazing bomber relentlessly towards a sprawling refinery complex while every primal survival instinct clamored for an immediate abort, profoundly encapsulated the essential, somber pact inherent in strategic bombing, the exchange of individual human lives for the attainment of paramount national objectives. The brave airmen who embarked upon the perilous journey to Ploesti had grasped this grim understanding intellectually during their pre-mission briefings. Yet it was Hughes and hundreds of his comrades who truly honored that profound bargain when the crucible of the moment demanded decisive action. His unwavering decision above the vital Romanian refinery was neither irrational nor an act of self-destruction. Rather, it represented a meticulously calculated acceptance that certain paramount military objectives inherently warrant any conceivable cost. That precise calculation, that resolute willingness to tender the ultimate sacrifice in pursuit of strategic advantage, distinctly delineates the chasm between conventional courage and the extraordinary valor that is officially recognized by his nation's most esteemed military honor. At merely 24 years of age, tragically fallen in a Romanian wheat field, Lloyd Herbert Hughes undeniably achieved precisely what the mission imperatively demanded. He successfully delivered his crucial bombs directly onto the target, irrespective of the unfathomable personal cost, and in so doing he irrevocably ascended to immortality.